Hi guys, this is your favorite philosophy of religion teacher, Steve Dwinells. This is Saturday morning. We have about 3 inches of snow outside. It looks like a blizzard. We were going to drive up to Louisville today, which is about 90 minutes or so. We can't even see our road, so I think we're going to postpone the trip and just hang out here at the house where it's nice and warm. You probably don't care about that. I don't know what the weather is like up in Oregon. I don't know if you guys get snow or if it's rainy, cold. I have no idea. Um, they used to tell me that Seattle was always rainy, and maybe it is, but I used to have to go to Seattle a lot for another job I had. And every time I went there, it was beautiful. Beautiful, clear skies, nice, cool weather. Drove up to Mount Rainier. So I'm just thinking maybe they're just telling people it's rainy and it really isn't. Well, my guess is, as you read chapter 6, you probably finally said, thank goodness I can read a chapter that I can understand. I'll have to admit the first 5 chapters are more than difficult. When you start talking about cosmological, teleological, ontological arguments, philosophy tends to talk a lot and sometimes seemingly say nothing. But hopefully these little mini lectures, as boring as they probably are, you watching my head talk like this, hopefully these will help a little bit. But chapter 6, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. And the idea behind chapter 6 is, how can we know God? How can we know that a God exists? Just like the other chapters. But the argument here is, we can know that God exists because we experience God. Now, I've included a number of YouTube videos on this week's learning plan, and I think if you will carefully read through them or listen through them, especially the first one, I think you'll find it very interesting what these people's experiences are. Now, when I go to the bookstore, there are tons of books of these near-death experiences and what people, experience. One book I saw at half-price books the other day said something like 30 seconds in hell or something like that, where the guy doesn't go to heaven, but he goes the other extreme. Um, Now, are these experiences of God? I don't know. I'm not one that's going to be able to judge. I remember when I was in seminary many, many years ago, there was this kid who was there. He was probably just got out of college, so he was probably 21, 22. And he talked about being on the treadmill one day, just running as hard as he could. And then he heard the voice of God, and he fell down, and he got a bloody nose, busted up his mouth, fell off the machine, and all this kind of stuff. But God spoke to him, and that's why he fell. And I remember then being very skeptical, thinking, no, you probably misstepped and probably just fell down, and you had to make something up that sounded good. Now, having said that and being much older now, who am I to say whether or not this young man had heard God or not? I can tell you as an experience, I have never heard the voice of God. Now, does experiencing God mean that you must hear the voice? No, and I think as you read through the chapter, I think the basic argument here is, when people experience God in any number of ways, that for them is proof of God. Now, the philosophers will argue, okay, if you have this experience, how do you really know it's God? How do you know it might not be an alien? It might not be a hallucination. It might not be a delusion. So the philosophers go back and forth, and they judge whether or not an experience validates whether or not it's God. Well, what I think is very interesting about the argument is, up to now, all the arguments have depended on senses, like, okay, being able to understand, being able to touch, being able to reason, being able to think. And now, with the experiencing God, the argument switches, and it's like, how can you trust your senses? How can you trust your mind? So I think no matter how you go about this, you're going to have some people who doubt. I have experienced God before, but it's always been in the form of, and you may think this is weird, but it's almost like a nudging. Like, I remember reading certain books before and having this nudge. It wasn't like a physical nudge or anything, but this unrest in my soul, is unrest inside of me that propelled me to then do something. I've had people who have said certain things to me which I felt like was an experience from God. That these people came into my life at a certain time, at a certain moment, at a certain point, that God wanted me to know about. There have been times where I've been praying, where I see the answers to prayers. Now, many of you may say, well, that's all coincidental. But now, I don't know how old you all are. That's not part of the demographics that I get. I'm 51 years old. And the older I get, the more I've come to realize that there are no such things as coincidences. Now, you may say, oh yeah, sure there are. But I think as you get older, you're going to realize that these so-called coincidences are not coincidences at all. They're part, for me, of an intelligent design. Now, that's where I'm coming from. I am not here to proselytize you or to make you believe anything other than what you believe. But I will say in chapter 6 that the experiences that you have as a person with a higher being, God, for those who may be of the Muslim faith, Allah, or whatever religion it is, you may come to believe that you experience that. And I think I would just challenge you to think back through your life and think about a time that you may have experienced God. Now, I put a discussion board forum out there, and if you want to share, if you feel comfortable in sharing an experience you may have had, please do so. But I would also ask that those of you who may think this whole idea is nonsense, that no such thing exists, please do not be so critical of others who do believe this. You may post your opinions and all of that, but as I've said before, no personal